A bright breakfast show hums through Richmond, chattering about chimpanzee chefs and prize-winning homes, the sound of an ordinary English morning. But nothing here is ordinary anymore. The man walking back toward AFC Richmond today left this club 3 years ago. He said his goodbyes. He went home to Kansas for good. And now Ted Lasso is back. This time, he is not here for the men. Ted is staying in a small room above May's pub, easing back into an old rhythm. A regular welcomes the coach home, then grins and mocks him for coaching a bunch of girls. Ted just smiles. Some things change, some things clearly never will. Because Roy Kent runs the men's team now, and the second Ted steps back through these doors, the past comes rushing in like it never left. Upstairs, Rebecca Welton is already fighting for the club's future. Higgins has commissioned an enormous report on whether professional women's football can even survive in London. He has not read a page of it. He spent the entire night memorizing the acronym instead. It plays like a joke. It is not. Somewhere in those pages sits the question that will loom over this whole season like a blade. Can this team last? And if it falls, what does it drag down with it? Then the door opens, and the first crack appears. Alice Chilton walks in and resigns. She built this women's team from nothing, held it together on scraps, and fully expected to be named its head coach. Instead, the club hired Ted Lasso. She is done being passed over. She will stay until Friday, help with the handover, and asks for only one thing, a letter of recommendation. But before she goes, she asks Rebecca a single, quiet question. Did you ever seriously consider a woman for the job? The answer is no. Did you consider any woman at all? Again, no. And that answer stays lodged in Rebecca long after Alice is gone. Then Ted arrives, arms full of Kansas City barbecue instead of his old biscuits, a small sign that the man who left is not quite the man who came back. He has already devoured Chilton's player dossier, a document so meticulous it borders on obsession, and he cannot wait to work with her. Rebecca has to break the news that she just quit. With Beard still tied to the men's staff, Ted needs a new assistant, and everyone agrees a woman on the bench would be the right call. Before he meets his players, Ted drifts through the men's side of the club. The old locker room, the shirts, the memories, all still there, all belonging to another era now. He reunites with Roy, and under the insults, there is real warmth. But there is a shadow too. Roy admits Beard has not been himself since Ted came back. Quiet and off, his relationship with Jane falling apart. Ted swears he is not trying to steal his best friend away, but the possibility already hangs in the air between them. Then Ted meets Alice face to face, and every drop of his charm slides right off her. She is blunt, impatient, unimpressed. Ted does not take it personally. He has only a few days before her resignation is final, so he decides to learn everything he can while she is still here. And the first thing she shows him is the locker room. It is worse than he imagined. The Lady Greyhounds are crammed into the academy locker room, sharing it on a rotating schedule, one shower, one toilet, barely enough space for their gear. Ted starts suggesting fixes. Alice cuts him off. You cannot fix this with a coat of paint. This is simply what second division women's football looks like. A club tolerating a team instead of building one. The press conference makes it painfully public. Rebecca celebrates the new women's side and introduces Ted as manager, then overcorrects with a loud speech about supporting women. But the reporters do not care about the women at all. They ask about Liverpool, about the Champions League, about Jamie Tart leaving for Barcelona. Question after question about the men, as if the team Ted actually coaches does not exist. He keeps steering back to the Lady Greyhounds. Nobody follows. So Ted goes to meet them himself. On the training pitch, Alice walks him through the squad from her dossier. There is Josie Gordon, the starting striker, sharp and lethal. There are the twins, Neve and Siobhan, center backs who go at each other harder than any opponent. There is a couple, Maddie and Margie, together since training camp. And there is Boots, real name Katie Quinn, a goalkeeper with staggering numbers who no big club will touch, for one strange reason. She refuses to wear gloves. Alice knows every statistic. Ted wants to know every story. That gap becomes the fault line of their uneasy partnership. Alice thinks the personal stuff is noise. Ted thinks understanding what makes a person tick is the whole job. When he finally asks Boots why she plays barehanded, she tells him gloves might help, but without them she can feel every save, right down to the sting. And the sting, to her, is the point. Ted does not fully get it. That is exactly why he keeps asking. Meanwhile, the money fight begins. Ted asks Rebecca for £300,000 to build the women a proper locker room. She refuses outright. So he plays her. He demands the men's locker room, gets refused again, then reluctantly settles for the visitors' room, which was his target all along. A clean bait and switch. Keely pushes the same cause from her side, and in the middle of it ends up alone with Roy for the first time in 3 years, the old spark crackling in every silence. But there is a problem with that visitors' room. Roy spent years turning it into psychological warfare. Uneven benches. Hooks set too high to make opponents feel small, cranked up heat to leave them drowsy, flickering lights, sabotaged showers, even a trained rat completing the nightmare. And now, quietly, Roy dismantles every last trick, pulling the gum from the shower heads and fixing the lights, so the women can finally have a real home. No one, he insists, can ever know his secrets. Away from the club, Ted slips into May's pub for a secret meeting with Beard, who shows up in disguise because he cannot stand the thought of looking like he is betraying Roy. What follows sounds less like two coaches talking shop and more like two people pretending a breakup never hurt. Beard says he is with Roy now, and Roy is good to him. Ted says he is happy to hear it, but it is obvious, painfully so, that both men miss what they had. Ted gently asks about Jane. Beard says he has to go. Then the week turns brutal. During training, Josie suddenly crumples, clutching her knee. Alice is at her side in an instant, calming her, promising her she will play again, riding with her to the hospital. The diagnosis is devastating, a torn ACL. Their starting striker is gone for the season, and Ted sees more than an injury. He sees how deeply Alice cares. He hears her slip and call Josie our striker. She keeps insisting she is leaving. Emotionally, she is already part of this team. Keely, meanwhile, floats a careful hypothetical to Roy. If two people clearly belong together, what is the point in keeping them apart? Roy knows exactly who she means. His answer is simple. Keeping the right people apart is bad for everyone. By Friday, the Lady Greyhounds finally get their reward. Keely unveils the converted visitors' room, clean, spacious, stocked, and theirs, right down to unlimited supplies. For players who spent the week squeezing into borrowed space, it is enormous. It tells them, for the first time, that they belong at Richmond, and Alice, the woman who softens for nothing, quietly fights back tears. Then Roy makes his move. He calls Beard in and formally releases him from the men's staff, citing an absurd technical breach of the rules, an old bylaw about insulting an official during a match. The excuse is obviously deliberate. Roy even points out that the rule applies only to the men's team, and other Richmond teams may have different policies. He is not throwing Beard away. He is opening the door and letting Beard choose for himself. Which brings us to the heart of it all. Alice arrives with a lineup of candidates to replace her. Ted sends every one of them home. He has already chosen his assistant, and it is her. Then he tells Alice her own story. A working-class kid from Lewisham, a ferocious young midfielder in Arsenal's academy, captain material, a superstar in the making. Then at 22, a torn ACL, a year of rehab. She comes back, and the other knee goes. 2 years later, the first one again. 3 tears. A playing career ended before it truly began, and suddenly Josie's injury lands even harder. Ted tells her that anyone strong enough to survive all of that, smart enough to build this team, and caring enough to sit beside an injured player in her darkest moment is already a coach. He knows she wanted the top job, he hopes she gets it one day, but until then, he asks her to stay and build something with him. He gives her 5 seconds to decide and rushes the count because he cannot help himself. She says yes, but the blade is still hanging. Higgins finally finishes the dreaded report, and its verdict is exactly what Rebecca feared. The women's team has a low chance of long-term survival, and if the investment fails badly enough, it could damage the men's program too. This time, Rebecca does not flinch. Leslie reminds her that strong women stand up for themselves, but stronger women stand up for others. So Rebecca decides the report can simply disappear, into fire, into the Thames, never spoken of again. And in the final beat, Alice comes to collect her recommendation letter, and instead of leaving, she grows. She admits how shocked and defensive she was when Rebecca overlooked her, then thanks her for the wake-up call and gently asks her to deliver hard truths with a little more empathy next time. Then she reveals the news. Ted offered her the assistant coach job, and she accepted. Rebecca lights up. The Lady Greyhounds finally have their coaches. The team is still underfunded, still underestimated, still staring down a future the numbers say will not work. Their best player is already down, but they have a real locker room now, an owner willing to bet against her own report, a coach who believes people matter more than statistics, and an assistant only just beginning to understand that her own story is far from over. Ted came back to Richmond thinking he was returning to something familiar. Instead, he found a brand new team fighting for its place in the same old world. And for Ted Lasso, that might be exactly the kind of fight that feels like home.